So my name's Miranda Thomson, and I'm one of the few voluntary sector led Bevan Commission exemplars, I believe. So there was a few others, but that was quite exciting for me to feel like I was breaking some new ground with a few others. Before I share my screen, I just wanted to say myself what my exemplar project aimed to do. So my Bevan exemplar project aimed to engage expert guidance from statutory health and social care teams, improving the confidence and competence of voluntary sector organisations as they support more people with complex conditions in the community. So it's quite straightforward, really, I feel. I also wanted to raise awareness of the role of volunteering in supporting people to stay well and independent, because I don't think that's always understood, and the coordination and the support needed for successful outcomes for everybody. You know, volunteers take a lot of coordination and support. They have their own needs as well. So, just to give some context, let me share my slides with you. So this is a quote from Nikki Needle, who's the Changing Practice, Changing Lives lead in Monmouthshire Social Care and Health, from an article by Fiona Liddell, who came out to visit our community projects. She leads Help Force in Wales. She's from the WCVA, the Wales Council for Voluntary Action. So she was looking at our model in Monmouthshire as an example of good practice. So there's great interest in what the voluntary sector are doing here in Monmouthshire and obviously in other areas. But I was just really keen. They like what we do and they want us to do more, and we've been working together for a long time, but we need some help. So I think my Bevan Commission exemplar proposal was very simple. In fact, a lot of my work is very simplistic. I wanted ideally in my Bevan project to have a health professional to be based in our community projects team, to be available as needed for training, guidance and advice for our staff and volunteers. And I thought that was a great idea and easy. But after discussing this with Helen from the Bevan Commission and Sarah Aitken from Public Health and an Iron Bevan Health Board, I followed their advice to pilot the project with a specific initiative. So we decided to focus on community connections, a project which is a befriending project, and how it would develop its services to become more inclusive for people with early stages of dementia, and how its sister project, Volunteering for Wellbeing, in the same organisation, would recruit and train and support volunteers for this new work. So I'm going to ask a volunteer to explain what Community Connections is in a minute.
I befriend an elderly lady. She's not very mobile, so she doesn't really feel comfortable or confident enough leaving the house by herself in case she falls over. She falls over quite a bit, so I'm sort of there for company as well. She doesn't have a lot of family that can visit very often and things like that, and a lot of her friends have passed away, so it's company for her. And yeah, if she wants to go anywhere, she can lean on me for support, knowing that if anything does happen, I'll always be there. So that gives her the confidence then for us to leave the house together.
So we know that I hope you're all able to see that video. We know from our evaluation studies that volunteer delivered solutions are effective in keeping people well and independent, and that volunteers are valued by health and social care teams as the eyes and ears out in the community. And this approach is helping services with the move from a clinical model to a social model, as outlined by the Welsh Government for Health and Social Care in a Healthier Wales. So there's some figures about some investment. So for every pound invested, there's £3.80 returned, social return on investment. And the induction costs for recruiting and supporting volunteers initially are £327 per volunteer. So obviously these are low costs. There is a full report from Community Connections on their website, Befriending Monmouthshire, for you to look at in more detail about that. Here's a statement from the Dementia Action Plan for Wales. Community Connections is a service that's been asked to support people with dementia, and this will involve increasing staff knowledge and confidence, recruiting volunteers for new roles and providing appropriate training and guidance. So my suggestion for this to take place is this healthy help model that I've identified. So statutory services invest in the voluntary sector by providing guidance, training and support. The voluntary sector organisations provide guidance, training and ongoing support to volunteers because they have expertise in that. And then volunteers provide the support to people to live independently and well and stay at home. So this model is in practice and it's working anyway. I wanted to clarify the bit about how statutory services support us in the voluntary sector. So how we started to do this was in February, we held a focus group for staff and volunteers and involved statutory integrated health and social care leads. We gathered some baseline information on competence and confidence, and we identified a specific geographical area and training support needs for our volunteers and staff. We met with the memory clinic manager and arranged for supervision for our staff and volunteers with the mental health nurse. But then, of course, we had this big issue of COVID hitting and lockdown happening, and this caused huge services, changes to services in our project. And we were really hit with a big problem because all of our work involved face-to-face work, which stopped. The memory clinic stopped. The services moved to telephone befriending, but we carried on with the pilot. And thanks very much to Community Connections, Volunteering for Wellbeing and the Monmouth Memory Clinic for sticking with me in this journey. Volunteering for Wellbeing recruited volunteers and designed a remote recruitment process for that. We Community Connections took on referrals from the memory clinic and met people over the phone. Their new dementia coordinator matched volunteers with beneficiaries over the phone, and we continued with regular support sessions for staff and volunteers with the mental health nurse. So it worked out okay. We managed to recruit 10 volunteers and 13 beneficiaries were involved from the memory clinic. We learned that the phrase early stage dementia is very broad, so we were advised to involve people who were assessed as having mild cognitive impairment by the memory clinic, because these people aren't ordinarily offered further support such as cognitive stimulation therapy and things. And it was important really to pilot this on a small scale. So thank you, Bevan Commission and an Bevan Health Board for advising me to, in a specific area, to develop a robust model that could be replicated. That was great advice, thank you. So there are some really positive outcomes for beneficiaries, but we kind of know that already as our model is already established. But there are some lovely things that happened, particularly through lockdown. And one gentleman now takes Zoom video calls with his volunteer friend. A family member commented that the joined-up working offered lifts a huge weight off her shoulders. Now her mother is involved with the project. My aim was really to look at the confidence and competence of the staff and volunteers. And volunteers obviously fed back to us, ongoing. We had ongoing contact with volunteers through the coordinators. They felt well informed and supported, particularly by the new dementia coordinator. And a volunteer explained that when he had identified some concerns, it had been promptly dealt with and he'd felt kept in the loop, which had been really reassuring. For the staff on the voluntary sector projects, the Community Connections team leader initially scored herself at a 5 out of 10 with regard to confidence in widening the services to involve people with dementia. She was really concerned about the demand on the service and the ability to support people. But at the end of the project, she moved from a 5 to an 8 or a 9. And she says the Exemplar project has given her team great confidence to support people with mild cognitive impairment. There's really good communication lines with staff at the memory clinic, and starting through telephone calls has been a gentle introduction to this new element and has reduced the fear factor, which is important to note that. She says the project has helped the monoveil staff understand what we do and how we do it. And it's a two-way thing. They need us and we need them. The team leader of the Volunteering for Wellbeing project also scored herself at a 5 initially. She was apprehensive. Her staff have limited experience of working with people with cognitive impairments, and she'd felt huge responsibility for volunteers in ensuring their safety and everyone's safety and coping with difficult situations. She also moved from a 5 to an 8 or a 9 and said that looking back on the experience, it's fantastic to see that initial worries were unnecessary because there was guidance and support available whenever it was needed. Here's a quote from the manager of the memory clinic, which explains how there's enhanced experiences for everyone involved, particularly the people who receive the support, and how the ongoing support is going to be there as a partnership going forward. So that's great to have established that through this project. I wanted to also explain some learnings through the COVID response, because it changed our plans so much. I'd been linked up with the Head of Public Health for an hour in Bevan Health Board by the Bevan Commission, which was a fantastic opportunity. And I just felt unable to approach her because she was so busy prioritising all of the response to COVID. So I don't know if that's my fear of bothering people, but anyway, I didn't really make the most of that link, but I'm hoping that I can stay in touch with her and move things on it anyway. I just wanted to mention in Monmouthshire, the response to COVID has been really amazing, and it really links with my project. Monmouthshire County Council responded by supporting to communities. So they established area teams and made links with the COVID support groups, the neighbours and the lead volunteers there. And social workers were drafted in as expertise was needed in some of the cases coming forward. And now 2 social work apprenticeships are in that team. So I'm chuffed to bits because that's my exemplar model. That's my proposal. I wanted health and social care professionals in the community teams. And because of COVID, I've actually managed to, that's happened. So it's not my doing, but it's great that it has. The lead social worker on that team says she has developed a better understanding of the role and needs of volunteers who have played such a massive part in supporting people through the lockdown. And we now have a new front door. That's what we're calling it. In Monmouthshire, we've taken this opportunity to establish a new front door, a phone number, an email address, a way in, away from statutory services that's community facing and accessible, where people can either offer to help or can ask for assistance. So the labels of volunteer and sort of beneficiary are blurring because people are just getting involved through this route. Community and voluntary sector options are considered first, and frontline staff are more aware of the group's services and opportunities that are available. And this is being carefully evaluated because there's short-term resource put in here, and they're looking at how this is being making a difference. A collaborative approach to supporting people to stay well is making a difference. For me, I just want to say that the Bevan Commission project has helped me take my idea forward. It's given weight to the importance of this work. People prick up their ears when you mentioned the Bevan Commission, and I've particularly appreciated the practical approach, the practical action it's enabled me to take. the listening and the expert guidance. I'd like to move this work forward. I want to do 4 things. I want to work with, I want to use the Healthy Help model to build capacity in other voluntary sector organisations and embed the voluntary sector in integrated service provision. I want to work with GAVO and other CVCs and local authorities, health boards and Helpforce to join things up with volunteering in health and social care, because I don't think it's joined up. I want to have discussions with public service boards and the regional partnership boards on how this model can be replicated in other areas. And I want to highlight models of good practice that could be replicated using a pay-to-share model of commissioning, because I think to avoid short-term contracts and commissioning and short-term grant funding would be a real good way ahead. So thank you very much for listening.